Hey, everybody, this is the Street Cop Training Podcast. God knows what episode number it is. I have no idea. I got to start keeping track. But I'm here with Matt Zalewski using his wife's Zoom, Alondra. And today we're going to talk about his story and his survival from being shot in the line of duty and a little bit of background and currently all those things we're going to talk about. So without further ado, hey, Matt.
How you doing, Dennis?
Did I ever tell you that when you came to my class in Austin and you spoke, it was the only time I didn't bring a videographer, and it's the only time I fucking regret not bringing a videographer?
It's kind of spur of the moment too, so I didn't
Oh,
really.
man, it was like if I could just go back and record what you told everybody in that class during that time. I'm just so annoyed that I didn't have somebody with me. And as a matter of fact, you're not the only person who said great things during that. I had like 3 other guys say some cool shit. How about the guy who had no leg in there, right?
Yeah.
So I said to him, I go, I bet you after that happened, you got a lot of new perspective about life. He goes, oh yeah. I mean, Cole, like it is. I mean, he's missing a leg and he's a cop. Yeah. So certainly when you go through something like that, your perspective on life changes. There's no question about that. Right?
Yeah,
I mean, we'll lead into that stuff here. So tell me about, we were just talking about before we started the podcast that you have a military background. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I joined the Army in 2004. Went into transportation, did that for a couple years. Went to Iraq in 2005 and 6. Got out in 2008 and kind of missed it, so I came back in the Army 2010, went infantry, and stayed in until the end of 2014. During that time, I went to Afghanistan. I was in Panjwai, and yeah, had a lot of fun. So.
Crazy, and you're not the only person. Walter Mackel. I don't know if are you familiar with Walter? He's in our group too.
Not really.
Okay, so Walter Mackel is a he actually served at Dakota Meyer as one of our guest speakers at the conference this year. But Walter, I'm just thinking about his story when he talked about I went to how many tours as a Marine Corps infantry in combat and was in many gun battles, ends up coming back and getting shot in the line of duty and almost dying. And he actually limped his way into my class in Louisiana. And I was like, oh, man, it's great to meet you. I'm like, are you fucking crazy, dude? Like, why would you, like, I'm grateful that you came here, but man, oh man. And that's what something he told me that, like, and now it's striking a chord with me talking to you,
Yeah, I can't tell you how many veterans I know who served in combat and then come back to get in critical incidents as a law enforcement officer. There's many of them. That's what's wild.
Interesting, man. So that's 2 that I know, you and him.
Yeah, I know. We actually had a guy out in Lubbock. He was one of the guys on the SWAT team. He was an Army veteran, did 2 tours in Afghanistan, and he ended up getting gunned down in a barricaded hostage or a barricaded standoff situation out there. And just crazy to come back from war and you end up shedding blood over here.
Nuts.
Yeah.
And you saw a lot of combat, I'm assuming, right?
Saw some, a little bit. So
yeah, you don't got to elaborate in the details of it. I know a lot of people don't want to get down to those details of things that folks did. I mean, I worked with a lot of veterans because we have veterans preference in New Jersey where you go straight to the top of the list. So probably 40% of my police agency was made up and compiled of veterans, a lot of which were just coming back from Afghanistan during the time that I was getting hired, like 04, 05-ish. So there were a lot of things that they were talking about that they had just recently experienced. They were younger guys then, they were 23, 24, and 25, whereas now we're 40 plus, which is strange. But so when did you become a police officer? Was it before you got deployed or when you came back?
it was when I came back. While I was in 2013, when I was transitioning from the military, I knew I wanted to be a police officer. I knew since I was a kid I wanted to be a police officer. So at the time I was going to college for criminal justice because I knew where I wanted to live in Colorado. You had to have a degree. So I was going to college for criminal justice, and then while I was in Colorado, I didn't really like where I was living there, so we moved to Texas. Around 2015, 2016 is when I started the police academy, and then 2016 went straight into being a police officer right after that.
You work for a pretty rural agency, just to paint a picture. You don't got to name the agency; we can redact that. But
yeah, I worked in a very rural agency in West Texas. We worked in a county that was 1,900 square miles, which is the size of Rhode Island, and our city was about 2 square miles. Very small population of 2,000. the nearest cities around were roughly 18 miles in any direction. So your backup was roughly 40 minutes away, 20 minutes away, depending on where they were. And our agency had anywhere between 3 to 6 cops as a staff at any given time. And so many times you were the only person on duty, you know.
Wow. You had 3 to 6 cops total at the agency, not on the road.
Yeah, correct. Like I think the most we ever had was 8 at our agency, and but we got down to 3 for a while. There, 2018, I think we were down to 3 cops for a while.
Are you working at the same agency now?
I'm a reserve officer at that agency right now.
Okay. So you disengaged from a full-time position there?
Yes, sir. I have some, injuries still that I'm recovering from. So
Yeah, you
I didn't,
certainly I bet you do.
yeah, I didn't think it was wise to go back full time until I came 100% healed. So
Listen, I can't argue that one bit. This is probably why I should do pre-interviews before we do the podcast because I just get caught off guard, start poking and prodding at certain things, and I have no clue of really a lot of it. Anyway, so what do you want to accomplish in sharing your story today before we tell the story?
I guess it's just multiple parts of it. The first thing is that a lot of times when you come back from an injury or you come back from a very high intensity situation such as combat, and this was a combat situation, uh, people often think it's not okay to be, to not be okay. And I just want people to know that it is okay to not be okay. And, like you went through something traumatic, it's going to mess you up. And so, you need to take it head on and deal with it. You can't just hide from it. The other part I want is, I don't know, just explain my story and let other people know, like a lot of people have misconceptions about rural departments and how policing is in different agencies, and just to give our side of the story, not many people have ever worked or heard about rural agencies, and they think, oh, it's just some bohunk town, nothing ever happens out there. But from our experience in Texas, we get a lot of the criminals hiding out there, uh, and it's the Wild West where we work. So
Mm. So let's go right into it. How long are you on the job before this incident unfolds?
about 3.5 years.
3.5 years in the job. Had you been spending a lot of time in training? Do you think you were prepared for the situation? What have you done at that time to prepare yourself for that? What would you have done differently? What things like that. Let's start there.
Okay, I think myself, I was very well trained for this. I kind of knew the day was going to come, just from where I worked and just from everything I'd seen from policing. Um, getting in a critical incident isn't uncommon for police officers. So I kind of knew that day would come, and with my military background and stuff, I had already had a lot of training, with firearms and shooting and things like that nature, and medical training. And so, um, yeah, I mean, I think I was pretty well trained. I wish I don't know how to explain, but I mean, I think knowing what I know now, I wish I would have did things differently. I wish I could have postponed the incident a little bit more. I guess it'd make more sense after I talk about the incident, but yeah, it's just you learn a lot more in hindsight, and so it's
Yes,
it's
I think
it's
that's
funny.
just and for us as police officers, generally we're thrown off the ledge and have to grow your wings on the way down. You know,
Yeah, I think that's the best way to train, though. You know.
it is, but it's also, for the big game, if you're having no practice and before you get on the field, you are setting yourself up for a bigger loss. That's why training is so important. That's why football teams train how long? I mean, literally the whole summer before they make play one game. What does a professional NFL league team play? 12 games in a season?
Yeah, and they
You know,
spend most of that time training prior up to that. So
yeah, I think even during the week they're training just to go and play a football game for 2 to 3 hours. I would imagine something along those lines.
I was lucky enough, though. Prior to my incident, I would train on the weekends. Me and my buddies would go out shooting. We'd practice one hand shooting. Oftentimes we'd practice doing self aid, buddy aid on each other's, doing medical training. Uh, that's why I think I was well prepared. I don't think the average cop would be. I know most of the cops. You go to the academy, you practice your shooting, and then you go into your qualifications once a year, and that's about it. Most guys aren't going to shooting classes. They ain't going to first aid classes. Um, they're not going to, proactive policing classes or anything. So I don't think the average cop out there would be, well prepared for situations like this at all.
Do you think that because you made the decision to train yourself, that's why you're here today to tell your story?
Guaranteed. Yeah, definitely. Because I invested in myself, that's why I'm here today. Had I not been training the way I was training, I guarantee there's no way I would have been here.
I lost you, dude. Say, hold on. It says my internet connection is unstable. Hold on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Just go. I'm going to ask you the question again. We'll do it, and Shumil will listen to this and chop it up.
Okay.
Do you think the reason that you're alive and here today is because you did do those self trainings on the weekends and your day off?
Yeah, 100%. I don't think if I had the training that we had from our academy alone, that I would have been able to go through the situation I did and come out the same way. A lot of the things that I had trained for was this particular incident that happened, and so I think that's what set me up for success in the long was investing in myself. You know.
Yeah, interesting. Let's go into the scenario, man. Let's go into what happened. Tell me about what happened that day of where your mindset was, how you're feeling physically. Did you have any uneasy feelings? Run me through the whole thing. Tell the story.
Okay, so that week prior, I was planning on leaving that agency. Me and my wife were going to move out to the Dallas area, so we can make more money, have better agencies, better support, things of that nature. And so my incident happened on a Monday, which was April 29th, and that Sunday I had come back from Dallas, went straight into a work shift, and that night I had pulled over two guys who were known to carry guns. They were known to be in the drug game and stuff. And when I was talking to them, I kept telling them, I was like, hey man, like, I know you guys might have guns on you. I don't want to get shot out here. And they made a joke like, we're in the middle of nowhere. We're not going to get shot. So I went to dispatch that night after I made the arrest, and I was talking to the dispatchers, and I kept telling my dispatcher, I was like, man, I just got this uneasy feeling that I'm going to get shot. She's like, no, you're not, you're not. So the next day I go into work, and as soon as I start shift, I start shift at 6 o'clock, 1800, and my primary job at the time was patrol, but I also did criminal interdiction. So I had no calls pending. I went out to the highway where I usually sit, and as I was pulling up, there was a blue truck there, and it was on this road called Bourbon. And I knew that one of our wanted fugitives were there. He was a criminal gang member. He had 5 felony warrants, and his family members had told me he was staying on the road Bourbon. He was driving a blue truck, so I figured this guy could be it. So I wrap around the vehicle. I do like a U-turn around it. While I'm going around it, I run the license plate, and it comes back to a city, that's right near us, where I knew his brother was living, and the address was the same address that one of his family members was living in. So I kind of, I started beginning to get reasonable suspicion that this guy was driving the vehicle. The vehicle had window tint on it. It had silver tint that you couldn't see inside. You couldn't see the reflection or his silhouette, and so that was my first probable cause to stop the vehicle. And before I knew it, the vehicle spun its tires, kicked up dirt, and took off, started speeding. And so I got myself some more probable cause. I tried to catch up to the vehicle, and we started going street by street. He would go down one street, hurry and cut. He does what I call skedaddling. We're not in a full blown pursuit, but he knows I'm going after him. He's taking off. So I hit my lights and sirens after he
Were you
pulled.
were you calling that in at that time?
Not at the time. There was other radio traffic going on. We only have one primary line, so I was waiting for the radio traffic to clear, which is another reason I didn't hit my lights and sirens. Is to, I got to wait for my turn in there, so I was just seeing where we go with this.
Was the radio traffic that was going on at that time important and pertinent, or was it people who were tying up the air with stupid bullshit?
No, I think this one they had a call and they were out what we call state line. It's on the New Mexico Texas border. Typically, the calls they handle out there are domestic violence and assault calls. From my recollection, they were handling one of those type of calls out there, or somebody was handling a call out there. So I figured my traffic stop wouldn't be that important. Um, and oftentimes I didn't initiate radio contact until I had began to pull the vehicle over. So I was running his information on my mobile computer at the time, creating a log through there. And so we start going street by street. He makes a left turn. I hit my lights and sirens. He makes a right turn, pulls over at at this house. And when his window comes down, I see it's the guy, and I'm looking for it. And his name is Daniel Ray Garcia. He has a quintessential mustache, glasses. You can't miss him. And so at that time, I knew he had felony warrants, and I conducted a felony stop. I'm like, put your hands out the window, put your hands out the window. He's asking me why. Next thing I know, he throws it to drive, he takes off. We go another street, turns on there, he pulls over to the right side. I conduct another felony stop. I call it in at the same time that we're in pursuit. This is all happening really fast. And by the time I can get out of my vehicle and pull my gun back up, he's taken off again. We go another block. I call it back in. I'm like, hey, he's taking off from me. We're headed towards the next city. And at that time, I heard one of the other deputies. He's like, hey, this is 112 on route. I'm like, okay, I got backup coming. So I kind of felt a little bit more comfortable at the time. And we make a left turn on this street called, I think, Avenue J. Dude pulls over to the left side. And that's when I got this uneasy feeling because, I've been in 30, 40 pursuits by this time in my career. And I don't think anybody had ever pulled over on the left side of the road. As soon as the guy pulls over, I'm still putting my vehicle in park. Uh, I see him exit. He has his hand at me with the gun. I can see the silver slide on the pistol, and he begins firing. So I hear one, two, three shots in my passenger or my driver's side door window, and I look over and you can see the holes. And I'm like, "Holy crap! I'm being shot at!" So I just start unloading on the dude. Um,
Can I just pause there a second? I don't want to interrupt it, but I just want to ask you, have you ever trained or did you have an opportunity to maybe employ your vehicle to neutralize him? Or did that's something you Monday morning quarterback later on?
Yeah, well, so that's what's crazy is right after I started shooting, I assumed that I ran out of ammo and I knew I'd been hit. I could feel like a lot of pressure on the left side of my body. So I put the vehicle in drive and I go to try to neutralize him with my vehicle. And he ends up falling out of the way. I slam into his truck, hit my head into the steering wheel. I had a
Shit.
canine cage on the back, so it was all metal. And so when my head went back and hit the headrest, it went right into the steel. So I
Wow.
kind of yeah, I got a brain injury from that. Sprained my neck is what they said.
Wow.
Yeah, so from there in the military, you're taught to get out of the kill zone. So he's still shooting at me. I'm putting in drive. I'm trying to move his truck now because I'm kind of pinned in. So I'm pushing his truck out of the way with my push bumper, and I see him laying on the ground. So I'm like, okay, I know I've been hit. I need to get the hell out of here. Backup's 18 minutes away. We have a EMS barn we call it. It's where the ambulance is, and so they're manned 24 hours. I'm like, I'm gonna drive there because I could feel myself. I knew I'd been hit. I didn't know how serious it was at the time.
Was your adrenaline pumping so much that you could not feel it? Or tell me about that.
Yeah, so we'll pause it right here. I'll go back during the shooting. The adrenaline was going so much, it was calm, it was peaceful. Um, During the firefight, it was like the most peaceful I've ever been. And the bullets are coming back and forth, and this is within like 10, 20 seconds. We're in the middle of a firefight, and I felt very comfortable with what I was doing. Um, it wasn't until afterwards that like it shot up and I was like, holy crap, let's get out of here. That once you feel like you're dying, your whole mentality changes. And so at the time it was the adrenaline was going, but I felt comfortable in the situation. I,
At what point did you feel like you were dying when you describe it that way?
so as soon as I took off and I pushed his vehicle and I'm headed towards the EMS barn, I could feel something on the left side of my body. It felt like an explosion, like an IED had gone off, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. So I'm driving. I make a right turn and I start heading down the street called Avenue J, and I start nodding off, and that's when I was like, "Crap, something's I'm bleeding out pretty bad." So I called in over the radio, and I'm like, "Hey, 711 Seminole, I've been shot. I've been shot. Can you get a helicopter?" They don't answer. I'm still driving. I'm nodding off. I'm like 711 Seminole. Can you tell my family I love them? I keep driving, and we get to this intersection where there's another major highway. And I remember there I was nodding off. I was like, "Matt, you got to keep pushing. I keep pushing." So I gun it. I go
So
over.
you're telling yourself, keep fucking going, dude.
Yeah, like, I feel like I'm getting weaker at the time, and it was kind of draining. But I just kept telling myself like, just keep driving, like one more block, one more block. And so it was about a 2 mile drive over there. I finally get over there, and I show up to the EMS barn, and nobody's there. And so I get out of my vehicle because I'm like, holy crap, like, where's the EMS people? And I get out of my vehicle. As I'm getting out of my vehicle, I'm calling on the radio. I'm like, 711 Seminole, where are
Is
you guys
anybody
at?
responding back to you at this time?
No, nobody. So at that time, I figured my radio, sometimes our radios don't work because I'm using my personal radio that's connected to my vest, like a handheld. And so I grabbed the car radio and I'm like, 711 Seminole, where are you guys at? They're like, what's going on? I'm like, shots fired, shots fired. I've been hit. And that's when all, hell breaks loose on the radio. So I tell them, I'm like, I'm at the EMS barn, get a helicopter. I put it down, step out of my vehicle. As soon as I step out of my vehicle, you could hear the blood. The blood was just pouring out of my arm, which is crazy because I couldn't hear out of my left ear at all, but I could hear the blood pouring. And I grab a tourniquet off my belt. I'm tourniquet myself. I couldn't get it tight enough where the blood was stopping completely. There's an SUV probably like 20 feet away. And so I'm yelling like, hey, hey, come help me, come help me. First person who hops out of a vehicle is a 13-year-old kid. And so I'm like, hey, brother, come help me, come help me. This 13-year-old kid comes over and he's trying to tighten the tourniquet for me and he's helping me out. And by that time, two civilians, they were behind the EMS barn at a softball field for a tournament. They came over and they grabbed my second tourniquet, cinched it down, and that's when the ambulance and everybody else showed up.
So you had two tourniquets.
Yeah, I had two tourniquets. I had a cat tourniquet up top and then a like an elastic band type tourniquet underneath it. And so I've been shot twice in the bicep, twice in the forearm, and so we stopped that bleeding. We start cutting off my vest. As soon as my buddy Ryan pulls down my vest, blood starts squirting out the back. I guess I've
Oh
taken a
fuck.
round on the back. Yeah, and so I'm yelling at them to get my first aid kit. You know, one of the guys couldn't find it. Well, my adrenaline's going, and I'm trying to take control, and I'm just yelling like, "It's right there! It's on the black bag!" And so they finally get it. They patch it up, and so we start stripping me down right there in front of the park, cutting off my uniform, just trying to find if there's any more holes. Luckily, it was just majorly just shrapnel all over my arms and my legs from the door and the glass and stuff. But when we took the vest off, that's when they realized, like, man, you got shot in the radio, and so that's why my radio wasn't going through, is because a bullet had got stuck right
Wow.
there. So the radio sat on my kidney, and it stopped it from going through. So we're waiting on a helicopter, and the helicopter says they can't land. So I'm like, well, look, I have an hour to live. I was like, let's drive. It's an hour to Lubbock, where the hospital is. I got 75-mile drive. I was like, let's go. We get halfway to Lubbock to the city called Brownfield. They're like, hey, pull in here. The helicopter's gonna land. They load me up in the helicopter there. We land in Lubbock, and the suspect's getting wheeled in out of his ambulance. And I'm like, how the hell did you do
Wow.
that? Yeah, crazy. We get into the ER. They start working on me. And one of my deputy friends, she's up there in the ER with me, and she's like, "Matt, you got shot in the chest." I'm like, "I didn't get shot in the chest." And we looked down, and right here on my chest was just completely swollen. And so one of the deputies, the Rangers, they went and got my vest, and they said, "Yeah, I took a bullet to the chest right in the vest." So two to the vest, five to the body total, and then a
Damn.
whole bunch of shrapnel.
Jesus Christ.
Crazy. Lucky to be here. So
Dude, may not be easy to tell, but yeah, it got me quite emotional. Listen to the story. Does it happen to people that when you tell them the story?
yeah, yeah, it is an emotional story, especially because like, I mean, how often do you meet somebody who's been shot at least once, let alone this many times, and been that close to death? So,
So what happens from that point forward? Like what they you go into surgery?
so they were like, they gave me the option if I wanted to be to be put in anesthesia to remove the bullets. I had been in surgery once prior and I didn't like anesthesia, so I told them to just take the bullets out while I was awake. And so right there, they were digging into my arm.
Could
Uh,
you feel it or they numbed you up?
the first time I felt it because I didn't want too many morphine and stuff, and then they shot me over some Demerol after that because it hurt pretty bad. And so they take one
Okay.
bullet out. I think I had one that was sticking out of my forearm. So there was actually a bullet sticking out of the forearm. It was a slug. And so they're like, all right, we think we got everything. Let's take you back for a CAT scan. They do a CAT scan and come back. They're like, no, we're just joking. We found two more bullets in you. And so that's when they went back and they took out one here and one somewhere else, and put the slugs and the little evidence things and started working on all the shrapnel that was in me.
I think the reason it draws so much emotion out of me is because it can happen to me, right? Can happen to me. Can happen to somebody who I love, who I'm friends with. And by the way, everybody in law enforcement is somebody I care about. You know what I mean? The best guys and girls I've ever met in my life. Maybe that's why I'm drawn so much to this profession and helping everybody as much as I can. Even this podcast, this episode here, I had one earlier that I forewent, and it's going to be a good one too. But this is the one I was more concerned with today because I just felt like hearing the story and relating to it maybe bring things into reality for folks. You know what I mean? So tell me about your continued recovery in the hospital. Did you stay at that center, or what's the rest of it?
So this was a trauma or a level one trauma center. So luckily, they had the best doctors in the area. They're like, "Hey, we're gonna keep you overnight because you're hemorrhaging," and the next day, they're like, "Hey, you're good to go home." I was like, "I was like, so what do I do about the wounds? They're like, just keep them dry." So the bullet holes were like wide open, like you could see straight in. They're like, "You're good to go." And so a week later, I went back to the doctors. They said, "Hey, they're healing," and the skin had pretty much covered up, and that's how it was. I got lucky, no bone damage, no fractures. They just clipped a few nerves, and that was it.
So tell me about the guy.
Daniel Ray Garcia. He's a known criminal gang member. Um, just just career criminal. He was wanted for 5 felony warrants out of 5 different counties. He had a probation revocation warrant that he was on. He had a previous aggravated assault with a deadly weapon in 2017, 2018, and the judge decided to give him probation for 10 years on that, while he was already on probation for other things, I guess. And so, yeah, he's just a career criminal. I dealt with him prior in 2016. We arrested him for some warrants, I believe, and he's just one of those guys that didn't want to go back to prison. So,
And what happened to him? How did you hit him? How tell me about that.
yeah, I guess so. I shot him. I got the good shot was right in the chest, clipped the top part of his left lung, um, broke his collarbone, broke all the all the bones up in his left upper shoulder. So after I got done shooting him, I guess he was laying on the ground, and his family actually came during this time period when backup was arriving, and they tried to clean up the scene. They tried to take his weapons and everything, tried to move his truck. They tried to move him, but he was laying out on the ground when they got there. There's actually footage from across on a house that shows him like the whole shooting and everything. And yeah, so he was close to dead when the first officer and the EMS arrived. His chest was raised up. He was turning purple. His lips were blue. Um, he probably would have died within the next couple minutes, but they ended up working on him. He lived.
Where is he at now?
So as of June, a couple weeks ago, we just finished up the trial. They gave him a life sentence, so he's getting 99 years. And then July 15th, we went and we did the probation revocation hearing. So they gave him 10 years on top of that 99 years. And so currently he's in processing before he goes to the main penitentiary here in Texas.
Did you have to go through the trial? Was it a trial or did he just?
He decided to represent himself pro se, so he was his own attorney, and we went through about a week trial. Uh, it was interesting to say the
Yeah, I don't
least.
think he probably didn't do a good job, did he?
No, it got so bad that he just provided all the evidence that we needed. So
Well, I mean, you're probably pretty much at a rock solid case. You know what I
yeah, I
mean?
mean it was on video, so
Yeah. Um, did he express any remorse? You had to face your shooter. Tell me about things like that.
so that was probably one of the harder things I've had to do in life is so between the time so because COVID kind of pushed the trial a year away during that time frame, he would call my cell phone and my wife's cell phone. And so I had a lot of resentment towards the guy at the time. Just a lot of anger at the system and everything because he would harass me through, calling my cell phone and stuff and trying to contact me. And um,
Did they file charges on him for that?
no, they didn't. They said it was his right because he was representing himself as his own attorney. So uh,
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy. You definitely get to see stuff. I guess I mean I hate to say that I'm a victim of a crime, but when you are a victim of a crime, you get to see things a little bit differently. And so when I went to trial, he tried to poke me. He got upset because I was out of hospital in 2 days and he was up there for 2 weeks. And so that was like an hour long of our argument is if I was shot so many times, how did I get out of the hospital faster than he did? It was, I don't think he had any remorse or any sorrow. I think it was more, he was mad that I'm free and he's not. And um, he tried to use, the claim that because I was a combat veteran, I had PTSD and that's why I shot him. Um, just a lot of stuff, a lot of crazy stuff that you see in the media. He was trying to use racial profiling. He said, you know, trying to say that I was racist and stuff. Just same stuff you hear with every other shooting that people try to say, and just a lot of discrediting. But the evidence proved otherwise, and you know, he ended up getting life in prison.
How's your family dealing with this? Tell me about how your family was notified.
So during the incident, I was trying to get my cell phone, and my chief had it in his hand. And next thing I know, he had to take off to go find where the shooter was. And so my chief took off with my cell phone, and I'm like, "Hey, I'm just trying to call my wife. Somebody give me a cell phone." So I think Ryan Martinez, he's one of the volunteer firefighters out there. We've worked together a lot. We're decent friends and everything. He's like, "Well, let me call your wife." And so he calls my wife while we're in the ambulance, and my wife was at work at the time, and he's like, "Hey, Alondra, it's Ryan," and he's like, "Matt got shot," and I could hear my wife screaming over the phone, crying, and she's like, "No, no," and so at that time I asked for him to hand me the phone, and I told her I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be okay," and I was like, "Just meet me up at the hospital," and then
Yeah, maybe some. I'm going to pause right there. If you listen to this podcast, and we have over 100,000 downloads a month now at this point, maybe having some kind of action plan in place to notify family members when something like this happens. Maybe starting a conversation with everybody's fine, nobody's dead. I'm going to
exactly,
start with that. He's conscious, he's awake, and he's breathing, and he's going to survive. But Matt was shot.
Yeah, definitely
No
something.
need to worry. He's going to be fine. He's going to live. It was not line. They're not non-life threatening injuries. He is here. I hear stories because now I'm in the center. I'm the universe. I'm the sun now in law enforcement, and everything was revolving around me at not every single time, but a lot of times, especially when it's close to here. And I hear the stories of the family notifications, and there's no plans in place. And this is not something that's hard to accomplish with just some thought and some careful. Think about what you would want your family to be told if this happened to you, and how, boy, it could have just saved your wife so much more fucking heartache. And by the way, the long-term effects psychologically of that, what you're doing to a family member, just that right there could really, really have impact on your wife. Has it affected her? If I'm not digging in too deep, is she suffering from anxiety more now because of something like that?
I would say yeah. I mean, she was there the whole time. So as soon as they called her, she was driving like 100 miles an hour to the hospital, and it's 75 miles away. So that whole time she's just
Was she
thinking
by
about.
herself, or was she getting an escort? Did somebody pick her up?
I think so, one of her family members went with her. I can't remember exactly.
But
Somebody
no,
was with
no
her.
police car to go there and get her and bring her.
No, so we're so stretched thin out there in Texas, and she was in another jurisdiction. Nobody escorted her up there. Nobody went to the house and told her. In our agency, it was just me and my chief in the city at that time. The other officers lived outside the city, so we couldn't have one of our officers go do that. Plus, most of the officers were at the scene, either securing it, working with the suspect, stuff like that. So, my wife, I think, drove up there by herself, gets to the hospital, and she's there from the beginning when they're taking the bullets out and everything. So I think it did have a residual effect on her. Definitely did. I mean, it's a traumatizing, thing to see your husband just get shot, and then seeing the bullets taken out of him and everything.
Dude, I can't even get to fathom the. I mean, the closest thing that I go to, and how petty this is my third child came on very, very rapidly. And by the time we got to the hospital, and dude, I was cooking. I mean, I'm talking about 8 to 10 minutes flat. It was go time, and my wife could not get anesthesia. And that was just childbirth, natural, without anesthesia. It was very hard. It lasted 10 minutes, and it's very hard to watch. I couldn't imagine what it was like being your wife, watching her, the man that she loves, the father of her children, to be. They're your kids, right, Matt?
Yeah, it's my daughter.
Okay, okay, yeah, just to make sure. Here on that, your whole world looks like it's coming to an end, and you're not. Nobody's probably talking to telling her like, "Hi, I'm Doctor So." Right, they're working on you.
Yeah.
And that's got to be some thought that we got to put into things, because they're going to occur. And whew.
I mean, she's just off to the sidelines in the OR. We're in the operating room at this time, and there's probably a dozen law enforcement in there, and but I just don't think anybody. I mean, we go through training for everything else, but I don't think anybody ever thought or put in thought how to handle a situation like this, how to talk to somebody. It's one thing when you're on a crime scene and you're dealing with a family, or like a car wreck, for instance, and there's dead bodies and the family comes up. It's one we deal with that completely different than we do with a family of our own. I think everybody else was so in shock that it had happened, they just didn't know how to deal with, talking to my wife about those issues.
We can say that you need training on this, and there's no question about it. You do. Guess what? We're training people right now. Even if
Exactly.
one or two or seven or 14 people take this and go and say, you know what? I'm the chief here. I'm the captain, because we do have a lot of command staff that listens and follows our stuff. Maybe now we just have, it's just so interesting that nobody fucking plays for the. Everybody plays this game like it can't happen to me. I think we talked about that when you talked in Austin. Tell me about that. What do you tell people?
I mean, it could happen to anybody, I mean, I can't tell you. So the crazy thing is, 4 weeks after my incident, one of our deputies in my county, 13 miles south of where I work, going after a suspicious vehicle, gets stabbed in the stomach, and he shoots and kills the guy. This is 4 weeks after my incident, and one of the deputies I worked with, and he's out there, dealing with the same crap I just dealt with. It could happen to anybody. It doesn't matter if you work in the biggest agency in the world, like NYPD or LAPD, or if you work in the smallest, like remote Alaska. This stuff happens everywhere, and so I think it's something everybody should prepare for, whether that's training, your shooting, your medical training, or even just follow up plan of like, hey, if one of our officers get hit, how are we going to deal with this? To include like everything from workers' comp to the outlook of what's going to happen after that, to how you're going to deal with their family members. there's a lot to take in. One thing I learned about, this shooting is it didn't just affect me; it affected the whole community. It affected, other law enforcement officers. It affected the EMS people, the firefighters. It affected a whole handful of people. It wasn't just me. I might have been the person who got shot, but in the end, there's a lot of people that it affected. And I guess just having a plan in place, kind of like we out where we work, we do plans for like if there's a tornado, if there's an earthquake, you should have one for critical incidents. So just something to think about.
Man, wild stuff. Tell me some of the things that you're dealing with physically and psychologically.
Phys-
PTSD, sleepless nights.
oh yeah, anxiety is one of the biggest issues. Um, Especially because this guy's a criminal gang member, so I'm always looking over my shoulder. Especially the fact that my personal information continues to get leaked out to this guy. So that's one of my biggest concerns. So that gives you a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and things of that nature. A lot of nightmares come with it. Um, you know, uh, I got diagnosed with PTSD after this had happened, and
I fucking imagine you would.
yeah, but that's not something it has a stigma with it. As much as I hate to say it, and that's just something I'm overcoming. And then I have the nerve damage in my arm, my back,
I'm
my
going to jump in for a second. Let's go back to this mental thing. Like, people really downplay the reality of mental health. And I think anybody's brush with death that close, whether it's you might be dying from a terminal disease to actual traumatic things where you're physically, going through an immediate, maybe a bad car crash. I mean, the brain is the brain, man. It's a very gentle, delicate organ. And when you fuck with it, at least you need to recognize that it's been fucked with and address it appropriately. So before we move on to the physical stuff, if you'd like to share, you don't have to share. You don't got to go into details. You can speak on the things that you're most comfortable with. How have you been dealing with some of that stuff?
So I'll be honest. I've been going through therapy. So like while the process had happened, I got shot in April. I think around June, I started realizing my anxiety was through the roof. I was having nightmares, couldn't sleep. So I'd stay up like 2, 3 days at a time at night.
Wow, that's bad.
Yeah, I guess insomnia is what they call it. And but I guess because the military, I didn't think much of it. I was used to sleep, getting 4 hours of sleep. Plus, I was working 16-hour days as a cop, so I didn't have much sleep the way it was. Um, I think I made the decision at that time to cut caffeine out of my life, and then I was trying to get into mental health. I had some troubles with worker comp; they wouldn't get me in, and so I went to the VA at that time. Um, so I was going to Veterans Affairs. Luckily, I was a veteran and I had that service, and
Why wouldn't workers' comp give you mental health care?
I honestly don't know. So my incident happened in April, and the first time I was seen by the workers' comp people was in January. So about 6, 7, 8 months later. And so in that meantime, I would contact
That's
them all the
fucking
time.
terrible.
Yeah,
Where's command staff showing up and saying we need to get this guy help?
so my chief was awesome. I have no complaints with my chief. This is more with so because we're a smaller agency, we use a corporation, I guess you could say, who runs the workers' comp and the
Yep.
insurance and
It's called
everything.
a GIF usually.
Yeah, they were the biggest culprit of all the issues I had. So
Oh, dude, let me tell you something. I want to say this to everybody in here. If you are going through anything workers' comp related, boys and girls, I'm telling you, the sad thing is the system's so abused that they're just ready on the defense. But when actually people need help, my suggestion to everybody is to really start to document, even from the get go, your first conversation and keep a running log. I know it sounds crazy and it's hectic, but you'll be thankful a year and a half from now when you're really trying to fucking hammer them down or getting compensated back for all the things that you forfeited out of your own wallet or pocket or bank account, whatever it may be. Um, they're brutal, man, and they'll actually pretend like they're your friend and they're your worst enemy at the same time. People maybe not know that I left on an injury. And I'll never forget my workers' comp doctor saying this to me. And you know what? I don't have him recorded. I wish I'd had a recorder in my pocket. He literally says to me in his office, "Hey, um, you know, I had you out for like another month, but workers' comp called and they want you back to work. So, I would suggest keeping you out for another month at least, and we'll see how you go from there. But they want you to go back, so I got to send you back." And I'm like, isn't that like against the code of ethics of doctors? And he kind of looked at me and just that look of like, well, business is business. And when you speak to other, and again, not all of them are bad. I've heard great stories of some really, really thoughtful workers' comp doctors, but you got to be weary out there, folks. You just because this is the people you've been handed doesn't mean that it's the person's doing the right job. And I when we do work like this, you really want to help the world. We really do. Generally, I'm a very selfless person who likes to provide comfort for other people. That's really kind of like who I am. And comfort maybe comes in the ways of comfortable knowing your job, comfortable being physically able to, handle a situation, a lot of things. So when I hear stories like this, man, it's just twists my heart around a little bit. And then on top of it, to be fucked over by workers' comp, they are a brutal, brutal, brutal entity, and some of the most heartless human beings I've met in my life. Ruthless, ruthless people.
Yeah, you
Okay.
definitely hit the nail on the head with that. That's the same experience I had. I documented everything from the get go. So every time, my claims worker would reach out to me, I have an Excel sheet going, and I would just document every single thing.
I would
Eventually,
honestly be recording the conversations too. I
yeah,
should
in
have done
hindsight,
that.
I wish I would have, because my workers comp guy, he'd said something along the lines of like, "Well, you're not that injured," and I was
Could
like,
you imagine these motherfuckers?
"Yeah."
Like, who
So
the
that's what
like?
like at that time in Texas, we can't get lawyers for this, and so I contacted like the ombudsman at the state, and I contacted politicians, everybody I could, and they're like, "Dude, our hands are tied." And so I went through. So that was kind of like that was a big a cloud above my head. That hits you in your just takes away some of your oomph out of you. So uh, I think that kind of had an issue with my mental health because of that, and so I decided at that time I need to get some counseling, and so I went to the VA, and they recommended to do prolonged exposure, and I didn't want to do prolonged exposure because you have to talk about your story over and over and over again. But in hindsight, it was the best thing I've ever done, and we
Yeah.
actually figured out a lot about the shooting, and we learned a lot more about the incident going over it. And
You know what, Matt? Sometimes, and I've said this in the other podcast that we do with Jenna Romano, who's our in-house clinician here at the company. Sometimes people, even ourselves or our friends or our family, always have good intentions and think we know what's best for us. But there's a reason why that people go to school and get trained as professionals in the mental health arena. Now, not all of them are great, but even when you hear something and it sounds like it's crazy, just like you said, it's the best thing that ever happened for you because they knew exactly what you need.
yeah, I mean, this was my anxiety went down probably like 70% after this, and the poor guy I get, he's a fresh intern, being seen under somebody, and so I was like his first real trauma, and I just unload like 20 pounds of shit on this poor dude, but he was awesome. We did prolonged exposure. Then after that, I
It's
went to
amazing.
CBT, and it was good. And so like they kept saying, don't hide the story, talk about it. And so currently I work for a state agency, uh, and we work for a veterans court, and that's what my full time job is. And part of our job is to go out there and talk about mental health and traumatic brain injuries and stuff. And so I had like two-part where I was a veteran and also a police officer. And oftentimes police departments will request us to come out there and teach class, help teach classes or talk about our incidents.
It's great.
And so yeah, we go out there and I try to explain to them my situation and what I've gone through, the same way I'm trying to tell you, and just let people know, like, if you need the help, to go and get it. And so I'm really grateful that I went through and did the PE and the CBT, and I continue to go to therapy, when I feel like I need, when you feel like, life's getting a little crappy or life's getting a little tough, you have somewhere to go to, an outlet, and you're not just bottling it up and, resorting to other unhealthy measures.
I think people would be surprised to learn how better they feel. And again, it's generally not going to be an overnight thing. You're not going to go there and do one and done and feel cured.
Yeah.
But like, okay, I'm a meditator, right? So I meditate twice a day, 22 minutes a day. People ask me about it, and I get the same story from everybody. Oh, I can't focus my mind. That's actually not what it's about. I can't control my thoughts. My mind goes too crazy. That's all part of the meditation process. But I remind people that when I turn them on to where I went to study for meditation, and or the online version of it, which she actually gives to law enforcement free or at a significant discount because she's a great person. It's Ziva Meditation. I'll give her a plug. Well, I'm sure we're going to have her on here. She promised she'd be on my podcast. And I didn't want to bring her on too early because, the podcast, although we have 60, 70, 80 episodes at this junction, I didn't want to bring her on too early. We didn't want to waste it. just yet. Um, I tell people, look, it's 15 months before you start realizing what it's really doing for you. 15 months. I've been privy to some things of understanding some more about mental health. You're talking about sometimes a year, sometimes half a year before there's some kind of improvement moving forward. So you can't get frustrated in the first two or three things. Meditation's a commitment, just like working out. It's 44 minutes a day. You got to find a place to sit and nobody bother you. It doesn't have to be quiet.
Yeah.
And dude, I got to tell you, it's wild that I really had zero anxiety before. Now I'm like in the negative anxiety. I've also realized that I'm probably not the right person at times to understand somebody who lives with anxiety. So for me to and you to have a discussion, I get that it's there. I'm very empathetic, but I guess I have a hard time sympathizing, and that's just an honest thing because I don't know it. You know what I mean? I could sympathize with losing a grandma. I've lost all my grandparents, right? I could really understand that. I know it exists. There's an empathetic, and I really find it to be a paramount mission of this company to have more discussion about that. And dude, I'm glad that you're here. Are you available if somebody is going through something
Oh
to
yeah.
reach out to you? Why don't you
My phone is a
provide your
good phone.
email address? Do you have your email address you can use?
Yeah. So it's my last name, Zaleski, Zaleweski, dot Matthew, Matthew, at gmail.com. And anybody reaches out to me, I mean, I'll get the resources that they need. I have a lot of resources in Texas for mental health for law enforcement officers.
Hey
Uh,
Matt, I don't know if you know this, but like we need you to come work with us a little bit too with that because what we're trying to do is put together a list of resources nationally. We have a girl in Canada, Jenna, number three, I call her, because we have three Jennas now here at this company. So let's do more conversation about that off the air,
Definitely.
and or maybe when I see you at the conference in October. Right, you're
Yes.
coming.
Yes,
Yeah, we're
sir.
excited to have you, dude. And you're part of that first big night event that we're having, where we're going to be really spending more of a private event with 200 people at it, but a private event, which will be really really dope. So back to what you were saying, you have resources people can reach out to you.
Yeah. So one of my jobs is to gather resources, and I'm just trying to get people to go in the right direction. There's a lot of, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of people who look at PTSD and mental health, and it's like a bad word. And somebody years ago has explained it to me, and they're like, if you broke your arm, would you just keep going on without going to the doctors? Would you just pretend it
Right.
didn't exist? And they're like, no, you would go get a cast and suck it up for 6 to 8 weeks, or if you have to get surgery, do that. They're like, same thing goes on with your head. If you injure your mind, you got to repair it. And I think a lot of times as police officers, we compound that by our unhealthy habits. And we're always riding 100 miles an hour. We don't really realize it until it's too late. And
Yeah, guys need to know that they're a human being, man, and that's
yeah,
okay to be a human being.
yeah.
People have to recognize that it's okay to be human.
We got feelings. You can't suppress everything. Everything's gonna catch up to you one day. I know we joke about. You'll be out on a call. You'll be at a crime scene or whatever. We laugh and we joke and we make fun of it. You get off that scene, you forget about it. You go to the next call or the next traffic stop. Uh, but that stuff creeps up on you and stuff. And I always tell guys, you know, if you're not as happy as you were 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, if you're not as happy as when you first were a police officer and you put on that badge, you know how we all feel. You get that badge and you feel like you're Superman. If you don't feel the same way, um, go talk to someone. Obviously, there's something going on, deep within you. If you don't have that same feeling as you do 15 years ago, and that's expected. I mean, we work in one of the toughest jobs there is, and I think a lot of people are just afraid to admit it. You know, and then there's the stigma of like, oh, I might lose my gun. What if they put me in a mental hospital? I mean, that's like the most extreme scenarios. That's less than 1% of the 1%. Um, Getting mental health help is probably the best thing you can do. Like, I feel a million times better. I'm able to go do stuff with my family. I know a lot of guys, and I had it myself. We had issues going to concerts or huge crowds and stuff. And I'm not perfect. Some days I have my bad days where I don't like to be around crowds or loud noises. But I've learned to have the tools in my toolbox, or the tools on my tool belt to be able to go out there with my family and enjoy life the best I can. Otherwise, you're just setting yourself up for failure. A lot of guys, you get stuck in that bubble of, like the anxiety's taking over your life, and a lot of guys will drink or find other outlets that aren't good, and they can't find their way out. I just want people to know, there's help out there for you. And there's plenty of different ways. You might not get on the first try, you might not get along with your first therapist, but there's people out there who care about you and they're willing to help you.
Give me your email address again for everybody because it really, folks, it takes one email over to Matt to start the process. We also have Nick Wilson with the Resiliency Project. And, we have opened up the doors and the gates, and we are trying to do our best. And we're trying to actually begin to structure this company to be able to handle what's going to come our way. We know it's headed. We have a lot of people who are reaching out who do need a lot of help. So give your email address again.
It's a ZALEWSKI dot Matthew MATTHEW at gmail.com.
Matt's an open resource for you to just reach out and ask for help, and everything's confidential, folks. If you're sitting there thinking, should you do it? Just why don't you just ask? Right? There's no judgment. Just
And
ask.
a
What do you
lot of
think?
well, yeah, definitely. A lot of us guys, you hear people say, "Hey, I'm always here. I'm always a phone call away." I mean, seriously, I'll answer anybody's phone calls, emails. I mean, that's what I do for a living right now. I'm always there. Um, I'd rather help somebody out than somebody struggle go through, a nightmare that they're living in. You only get one life. It's not worth living, in misery or with anxiety or with any type of mental health issues. Go get the help. Reach out. The one thing you can do today, if you might be on the fence, is just make that phone call. Just send that email. Um, have some humility. I think that's what a lot of us are lacking is the humility to take that first step. Uh, once you do that,
Scared. I don't know if it's humility or fear.
yeah, or both.
Hey, dude. I've talked to people who said the anxiety itself prevented them from grabbing the phone or
Yeah,
making the appointment or making the first initial phone call. And I want to remind people, and this is why I'm not great to empathize with, or I'm not, I'm not and my wife calls my one daughter an empath. She goes, when she cries, when somebody else is crying, she feels like she like makes her upset to watch other people in pain. She gets very, very concerned. And it's not, it's just her personality. I get it very much. Nobody's going to judge you. Kind of lost track of where I was going with my point there, but there are resources available. Nobody's going to judge you. Uh, let's go back to your story a little bit since we covered the mental part. Tell me about the physical part.
So I have like shrapnel in my body still, and so you can kind of feel that when you're like working out. I also had the nerve damage. So the bullets hit three different nerves in my arm, and so all three are still going through the process of recovering. I guess they say it takes like a year for my nerves to grow back, and so I'm still having some issues with that. And the traumatic brain injury is one of the other things I've been dealing with. So my head gets kind of discombobulated sometimes, but I did some cognitive therapy, and I'm doing my treatment plans and overcoming all that.
It's great, man. You're such a
Yeah,
good dude, bro.
not as good as you, Dennis.
That's not true, dude. That is not true. You're better. You're just a good dude. And you know what? The law of attraction brings us all together. Um, you're just a good dude. It's just great to talk to you. This is probably one of the most proud podcast episodes that I've put on. I think and by the way, I don't know if you know this, but we actually have a lot of people who have similar stories to yours scheduled for future podcasts. I mean, I'm literally doing podcasts like you would not believe the fucking calendar. It's every day, twice a day to try to get more stuff out where we can deliver value because these are things that need to be talked about and be heard on a major platform. And
Yeah.
hopefully, guys and girls, are patient, understand that we are doing our best to get as much information as fast as possible. And I do have a company to run, and I am a father, and we are trying to do the best that we can for everybody here. What are some other things before we begin to wrap this up that you want to pass along that maybe this shooting taught you that you can offer some advice that maybe people don't know outside of the stuff we already discussed? And I think that's about it. What do you have? What do you want to finish off with?
Take vacations. That's what I'll tell you. I got wrapped up in the job. Oftentimes, I just love the job. Every day I went into work, I couldn't wait to work, and I let 1 year went by, 2 years went by where I barely had a day off, and so you look back in hindsight, especially after an incident like this, and you have vacation days for a reason. Go use it, spend time with your family. The job. Somebody told me once, you know, if you were to die today, your job would replace you before you're even in the casket, and that's the biggest truth there is. So just enjoy life. Be the best person that you can be out there. Don't be complacent. Don't be a crappy person. You know, we only live one life, and so why not excel at it? Be the best of that you can be. Be the best person you can be. And so just
How
give
about how
everything
about how
one
about
percent.
how about any thoughts on training for medical
Oh yeah.
training?
Definitely with
Oddly enough, the podcast that had to get postponed earlier was Sean Barnett, who's our life saving medical tactics instructor. And I got to tell you, it's what blows my mind is it's not the sexiest thing, and I think a lot of us will equate some class like that to the bullshit you had to go through in the academy, taught by some fucking mope EMT, $9 an hour, overweight loser who looks like a sloppy fucking soup sandwich, right? Being skilled enough to be able to provide some skill. That's the whole class is designed around. Here is 5 scenarios that'll probably save your life. We've taken as much as we can and go, okay, we can't get somebody certified as a paramedic in a day. Here are 5 things that we can do to greatly increase the odds of something that may be likely to happen to you. 2 tourniquets, right? Why were you carrying 2 tourniquets?
because sometimes they fail. Or in the military, we always carried one for each limb. So if I got shot, on the left arm, left leg, I need two tourniquets. And so, you know, that's just something I was taught. I'd recommend everybody to take at least like a stop the bleeding class. Um, that's the most important thing. Most people die, from bleeding incidents. So definitely a stop the bleeding type class. And most people in most agencies they shoot once a year, twice a year at the best. Go take some shooting classes. Part of our job is being proficient with that weapon. And the other thing is every bullet you fire out of that weapon, it's got your name on it. So you don't want to hit any collateral damage. Be the best that you can be with the shooting, with the medical, because like in my incident, you know, it took about 10, 15 minutes for medical to get there. And had I not been able to stop the bleeding myself, or slow it down, I might not have been here. So
Guys think,
definitely say,
guys and girls in this field, they think it's a fucking joke, dude. Or you
yeah,
know what? It's just easier not to. I gotta tell you. I gotta fucking tell you.
complacency. I think it's not going to happen to me. I can't tell you how
Right.
many times I've heard that. You never
Oh
know.
yeah.
That there's so. I mean, you know that from working criminal addiction and being a street cop. There's criminals out there in every other vehicle. So many of those vehicles going past us. There's somebody out there just trying to skirt through the system. And there's bad guys everywhere. You just punch in uh, the different shoot. I got all messed up, but you're just playing the odds. You're rolling the dice essentially. It's going to happen, especially if you're a proactive cop. You
Oh
know,
yeah. Oh
I made
yes.
well over 3,000 traffic stops in my time, and that's just rolling the dice. It's bound to happen. It's a
Well,
lottery game.
you're not rolling the dice. You're begging for it.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with a guy. I was in Indianapolis yesterday, and a gentleman said to me, "So we talk about things," and I said, "Obviously, I'm going to have a lot of use of force reports every year because it doesn't happen to the mopes, to the slugs. Who do you think they were sending to the hot jobs? Do you think they were sending the worst person that we had to the real important shit? No. Who do you think they were sending to the fight calls? Me and the other guys were cleared from our get clear that car. We got a fight cooking. We need you, and you over there. They're not set. And I'm not listen. There's value in everybody, but dude. And then I'm out. Other guys are sitting, smoking and joking at the convenience store for 4 hours. I'm I'm looking for trouble. I that's like a new thing in my mind where I tell people, I go, I find it comical when an agency says, "Oh, this guy, he's always looking for trouble." Well, you're the fucking police.
Right.
Aren't you supposed to be looking for trouble? Right? Like, how fucking moronic is it to say, "Oh, he's always looking for trouble." Trouble. That guy's a shit magnet. Is he? Aren't we supposed to be? You know what
That's
I
what I
mean?
like.
So it's interesting things like that.
Yeah. And I would say if you are proactive
Else,
copy, you know, if you're proactive cop, if you're out there trying to, get those felony arrests or get those, want to chase warrants and stuff, definitely get that training because you got to remember at the end of the day that we're animals. Humans are animals. You back somebody into a corner, they're going to do three things. They're going to fight, or flee. And there's not many options. A lot of people fight. They don't want to go back to prison. They don't want to face the charges. And, I mean, I can't tell you how many times uh, we've been in incidents similar, chasing bad dudes who are wanted. It's not uncommon when you're out there being proactive. So,
Hmm. Well, Matt, I don't have anything else. I mean, I can't thank you enough for taking the 1 hour today to sit and talk with me, and it was a good one.
I
Like, this is
appreciate
so
that.
good that I can't wait to do more. I wish I could just roll into another one right now, but then I got to bother a dude who's been shot like you and be like, "Hey, you want to do one?" I'm like feeling real good about it right now. You know,
I think it's good though for them to talk about it. So
not only good for you, dude, but like, how about that blessing in disguise with everything that's detrimental in your life, right? The most fucked up things that happen to you, you figure out 3 years later was done for a reason. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And brother, I've been put through the ringer for a reason. I've been in trouble on duty, off duty. I've done this. I've had that. I've been fought. I've been this. And I had to go through that to be me. I had to go through that to come out and help the world. You know, I actually had a conversation with Kenny today, and you know, he had received some acknowledgments and received some awards recently. And I'm actually going to read the text from you before we get off. And this is really how we think as a company. Hold on a second. Where's my Kenny messages? Got to come down a little bit. It was early this morning because we're both up early. Let me find my Ken Williams text messages. Where are you, Ken? I got to search at my phone. Hold on. But yeah, dude, I certainly. Here he goes. So I said, he wrote to me. I sent those just because it's a testament to you, your friendship, your leadership. It's helped me progress in my career and molded me to the person that I am. Truly am, and always will be grateful for your friendship. I said, dude, the feeling is very mutual. A lot of admiration from me. You're a unique dude. And he said, unique is accurate. LOL. I go, but so am I. Very rare human beings. Think about that. Acknowledge what makes you important to the world. Literally training cops and saving countless lives. Ken, countless lives. More than we can measure. At the end of this thing, the work is Nobel Peace Prize worthy. Although you'll never see one, it is true. Making more of an impact on the world than you can ever fathom. And he wrote back, very true about being rare humans. Those kids being saved is the most rewarding part of training these cops. And dude, that's the only things, that's what we know about. There's a story with a 9 and 12-year-old that his training resulted in them being saved from being sold in the black market after being kidnapped. He wrote, if no one ever came to my class again, I'd be completely satisfied in the content. Um, you know, I tell people that, like, I think we planted enough seeds where if something did happen to me, which please, Lord, if you're hearing me, don't, I want to be around. Like, I got a lot of work to do. You know, don't get misconstrued of what the objective of this company is. I think it's very clear, and I think people want to understand it. That's why they get behind. It's why they throw this logo on their shirts and they stick them the stickers. It means so much more than what you think it is and what we're trying to do. And we'll never get acknowledged for it, or maybe we will, but that's not what I'm doing it for, dude. I'm not doing it for a fucking award. You know what I mean? I'm just not. I'm doing it for when at the end of my days and my kids are asking me, what'd you think about your life? I'm going to go, did it. Did what I was fucking supposed to do. Like, I was offered this opportunity. I took some very, very large leaps of faith, and it paid off. And I want to pass that along to everybody. The leaps of faith paid the fuck off because there's many times I could have laid down the sword. Many times to this day, people sling mud my way, you know, for what? For trying to help cops, right? Because they don't like my delivery, because they're being held accountable for their behavior. Because I'm saying you should have a plan in place. And if you don't know how to do it, ask somebody. Nobody's saying you don't got to be the boss anymore. Just employ somebody else. Learn some things. Anyway, I don't have much else, Matt. You have anything else?
no, I really appreciate your time. Appreciate street cop training, everything you guys are doing.
Yeah.
So
Thank you, man. I appreciate you. All
thank you, man.
right, brother. I'll talk to you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you liked what you saw, subscribe to our channel or leave a comment below, and also like us too. It means the world to us.